Hello everyone, good morning. Welcome to the webinar. This is Anusha from ManageEngine. For those of you who haven't heard of ManageEngine, ManageEngine offers a suite of solutions to enable effective IT management for large enterprises. We are also a part of Zoho Corporation, which provides cloud-based business applications. Okay, let's get back to our webinar now. As the title suggests, which is managing privileged users and auditing their access, a must have for GDPR compliance. We'll be spending the next 30 to 40 minutes discussing the new General Data Protection Regulations or the GDPR and what the sole aim of it is and how privileged identity management or PIM comes into the picture while trying to comply with the GDPR. So once I tie in PIM with the GDPR principles, I'll also be showing you how ManageEngine Password Manager Pro or Privileged Identity Management Suite helps you get ahead with your GDPR compliance with its features. So, in case you're unaware, Password Manager Pro is an IT security and compliance solution that allows administrators and IT teams to protect and manage the privileged identities like administrative or root passwords, SSH keys, application accounts, SSL certificates, etc. And also control privileged access to target devices, which via these privileged accounts. So I'll show why every enterprise needs a solution like Password Manager Pro while designing their cybersecurity plan for the GDPR. Post that, I'll also allot a few minutes to take questions in case there are any from you. So that's the agenda for today, and let's start. So the GDPR, it's been on the news a lot lately, or to be more precise, it's been the news lately. So will it transform the way that the IT industry perceives personal data? Well, I can't say for sure, but it's always better to be prepared for a change that we know might definitely be coming our way. That said, what does GDPR want us to do? It wants us to protect. Yes, the essence of the GDPR is to safeguard the personal data of EU citizens. It doesn't matter where you run your business. If you work with the EU clients or employ EU residents, it's imperative that you comply with the GDPR before May 25th of this year. This mostly leaves you with a little more than a month's time for all your preparation. So the regulation will be replacing the currently existing data protection directive in the European Union. The GDPR is simply, the latest or even the longest in a line of privacy regulations that date back to the 1980s. We know by now that personal data protection is GDPR's motto, but are we aware about all the traits of a person that get covered under the term personal data? So, what qualifies as personal data according to the GDPR? So, one thing we know for sure, it's much more wide ranging than personally identifiable information. I mean, the acronym is PII, which is a common term used across organizations earlier while addressing an individual's personal information, such as their name, email, phone numbers, etc. On the other hand, according to GDPR, GDPR's personal data includes a lot of additional traits, such as the tracking data, social media posts, like what people post about themselves on social media platforms, photographs, personal preferences, their tweets, transaction, their race, their gender, their IP, even their machine's IP addresses, etc. That's a lot of personal data to protect and manage. So apart from this, we also need to be aware of who handles all this data. They are the key players in the GDPR. So that is the first one, the first data entity, that is the data subject, whose data we collect with their consent. Next, there are data controllers and data processors who are interested with the responsibility of respecting and upholding the data subject's privacy. Finally, we also have the regulatory authorities who will be handling the data in case a legal need arises. So, to be short, the GDPR is all about personal data protection. When you talk about personal data protection from an enterprise's perspective, the most basic requirement is actually safeguarding the IT assets in which the data is housed, right? So let's draw a quick chain here. You got personal data in your in most of your IT systems, like say your data centers house a lot of EU clients' personal data. So you got those systems, and access to those IT systems is made possible through privileged accounts. And therefore, you need to be sure about who has access to those privileged accounts in order to better protect your EU clients' personal data. And this is exactly where privileged identity management comes in. For without a without a robust PIM solution to take care of uh, you know provisioning privileged access for your employees, say your contractors, you cannot achieve a wholesome GDPR compliance score, because privileged identity management, it occupies a a very paramount position in GDPR compliance, that without PIM you cannot achieve GDPR compliance. So now that we know how PIM ties in with the GDPR, like what are your responsibilities as a data controller or a processor? Well, some of them are security of personal data again, and log all personal data processing activities, privacy by design, risk and impact assessments, data breach notifications, mechanism to obtain explicit consent, and appoint a data protection officer. These are like a few of the responsibilities that the GDPR spells out. And almost like 80% of these responsibilities mandate privileged identity management in one way or the other. And this is a table that shows a couple of articles that can be directly tied with PIM. For instance, if you read through articles 25 and 32, yeah, 25 and 32, you'll like understand that they emphasize the access to systems that contain personal data, the personal data of your EU clients. So that access to systems should be strictly controlled. So that is a primary reason for why you need PIM to comply with the GDPR. Strict access control is an important component on which the whole idea of privacy by design is conceptualized in the GDPR. Now here's a brief look at how ManageEngine Password Manager Pro can help you control access to your critical information systems. I'll move on to the next slide for you. So, once you have a Password Manager Pro installed in your environment, you can simply cut off all communication channels to, say, a Windows remote machine, and mandate that all users who require access to that machine will have to log in to, Password Manager Pro and launch a remote RDP session from Password Manager Pro to that machine. So the whole privilege session, the action of launching a privilege session, it takes place via Password Manager Pro and not outside of it. So that is how Passive Manager Pro centralizes your privileged access provisioning mechanism and ensures that all privileged activity across all departments is carried out through a uniform portal. And you can also achieve layered access control for different machines, based on the criticality of the machines involved. Like that, take what you need and ask what you need, and there's also you don't need it. So I'll describe what these three sentences mean with the with, sorry with the, yeah, with the next screenshot, layered access control. So this is like a screenshot of Password Manager Pro's user interface. So as you can see, this is the resources tab of an end user. It's like how the resources, the privileged accounts will be displayed for an end user who is logging in to retrieve a privileged account to log in to access a remote machine. So as you can see, for instance, if the person, let's say your colleague, if your colleague requires access to a remote workstation on a daily basis, and the workstation does not contain any personal data of individuals, and so you can simply delegate the credentials of the machine to your colleague via Password Manager Pro and give them considerable access to carry out their job. Because if like provided that this operation does not need any intervention from you as an IT administrator, you can simply delegate full access to that a machine and let them do their job on a daily basis. Now, say your colleague needs access to a domain controller which contains data like AD user credentials of your EU-based employees. No, this no, your like AD user credentials, they will qualify as personal data according to the GDPR. So to tighten the control you have in this scenario, you can mandate that the colleague has to raise a request to you, the IT administrator, every time that they require access to the domain controller. So, as you can see in the screenshot, like see towards the bottom of the screenshot, you can notice that there's a request button. So that is how you enable control. So once the colleague requires access, they'll have to come and click on the request button, and immediately an access request is raised in Password Manager Pro, and it will be sent to you, your account. So once like scrutinize the access requests and decide that you can approve access to the person, you can approve the request, and only upon you approving the request, the colleague will be able to access the domain controller. So you can also go a step ahead and delegate only login capabilities for that machine instead of sharing the credentials in clear text with them. So, there's also, if you look at the screenshot, there is a hover text which says you're not allowed to retrieve this password. So, this is because, like, say I am an IT administrator, I have decided not to, share the credentials with the person. Instead, I'll be allowing the person only to directly launch an RDP session to the domain controller with a single click. So, I'll show you that better with another screenshot for you. Yeah, see, direct login capabilities. So instead of, having to look at the credentials, all they have to do is directly launch an RDP session to that machine with a single click. So apart from, I'm talking only about RDP sessions here, but apart from RDP, Password Manager Pro also supports layered access control for SSH and SQL sessions. So next, it's article. It's Article 33. This article implies that enterprises should maintain a thorough documentation of every activity carried out around personal data, which will in turn, require a complete record of privileged account access and sessions launched to systems that contain personal data. In case, I mean, if there's a rare case of a data breach coming up, the GDPR requires that you hold evidence for actions that you have taken to stop suspicious activity in its tracks. So Password Manager Pro also helps you achieve that. I'll show you how. So yeah, how ManageEngine can help here. Yeah, with a complete track of all user operations with extensive audit logging and live activity feeds. So here's another screenshot for you to understand this feature better. Yeah, audits and notification. This is a sample screenshot of how Password Manager Pro audits activity. As you can see, you can configure customized auditing for each and every single operation in Password Manager Pro, and also generate SNMP traps and send syslog messages to management systems. You can also configure email notifications to desired recipients. These email notifications will be instant, in the sense once an activity is carried out here, the email notification will like instantaneously be sent to the recipient. So all these features, they basically help detect anomalies quickly. So yeah, apart from this, you can also record all the privileged sessions launched from Password Manager Pro and store them securely as video files for future auditing needs or forensic investigations. It's also like you can see the screenshot here. It shows you this is the recorded sessions tab. In the sense, all the privileged sessions, say an RDP or an SSH or an SQL session which were launched earlier, are completely recorded by Password Manager Pro and archived as video files. So once they are archived as video files, the recorded sessions tab will showcase all the files that have been, all the files of the privileged session. So whenever the need arises, you can simply pull out a video file corresponding with, with the activity that you have to check back, and playback that playback that video file to discover if whether any suspicious activity or an unauthorized activity has been conducted. And beyond session recording, you can also it's also possible for you to join an ongoing ongoing privilege session in case of need. In case you have to, like, let's say a new person in your team is like have launched an SQL session to a database center, and you need to know what the new person is doing, because the data center contains a lot of personal data, and you have to be double sure of what that person is doing and does not accidentally access any personal data. So it's possible for you to simply shadow the session. In the sense, you can join the active session and parallelly monitor the activities that are being performed by the new user. If you catch a site of any unauthorized or even accidental, it might be unintentional, but if you catch sight of any unauthorized activity, you can simply terminate the session with just a click. So these are Password Manager Pro's session management capabilities, which together they equip you better when it comes to say controlling and monitoring the access to critical information systems that hold the personal data of individuals. And yeah, this is the final article for the day, 35, Article 35. So this is mainly about risk assessment. The GDPR mandates that once in a while we take a perspective and analyze possible sources that may spell risk to the personal data. So from a PIM point of view, it is always good to be aware of who has what privileges. Which user in your organization has like what kind of privileged, what kind of access, like a full access, or what kind of access provisioning to a critical information system. And also it like decide whether any of these privileges are necessary. Yeah, so with Password Manager Pro, like when it comes to analyzing risk, you can generate easy to understand reports that showcase the access scope provision to each user. So I'll show you a screenshot so that you can better understand this point. Yeah, so like detailed reporting. So as you can see, this is the reports section of Password Manager Pro. There are a lot of subtabs like password reports, user reports, general executive reports, compliance reports. So you can generate reports that showcase the access scope provision to each users, which helps identify potential areas of risk. And you can also schedule periodic scans to detect weak passwords, say passwords that are simple and guessable, passwords that are not compliant with the enforced password policy, or SSL configuration vulnerabilities, and more. So these are some of the capabilities. Like Password Manager Pro covers a wide range of feature sets. I only showcased a few of Password Manager Pro's capabilities to help you understand how it can how it can enable you to achieve GDPR compliance. So these capabilities, when enforced together, they will empower you to achieve total control over privileged access in your organization, thereby laying a solid foundation for GDPR compliance. So that's it from me, guys. Before I go ahead and summarize, I would like to take a moment and check whether any of you have questions for me. So I'll wait for a couple of minutes to see if there are any questions coming in. Else, we'll go ahead and summarize. So I haven't, I haven't seen any questions coming in until now. Maybe I'll give it a minute more before we close the session for today. Okay, no questions, guys. So we'll end with a crisp thought for today. So a very short recap for the webinar, which is privileged identity management and access governance, is the first step that you have to take if you want to comply with the GDPR. So with that, I'll be closing the session for today. I hope the webinar has been useful to you in one form or another. Do let me know what you think. You can also send your feedback, questions, or even if you got a demo, if you would like a personalized demo of Password Manager Pro, please write to hello@passwordmanagerpro.com and we'll respond immediately. So again, thank you so much for joining, guys. I'll be closing the session now. Thank you.